Welcome to another podcast episode of Faith, Valor, and Growth.
Welcome.
How you doing?
I'm outstanding. How about yourself?
Amazing. This is just another beautiful day. You know, I know when we ended the last time, we ended with a prayer, and I think that starting with the prayer is probably the way to go, and then we'll continue from there and talk about what we're going to cover and all that fun stuff.
All right. So I'll open up with a prayer. Heavenly Father, I just pray that you bless this episode as we just get into everything that it is you need us to get into. Lord, I pray that you would give Dominic and I discernment and wisdom as we speak to our audience. I pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
So let's talk about growth right quick before you get in, because I know we're going to open up with a little piece of scripture here that you're going to read. It's kind of set the tone for the episode. But let's talk about growth for a second. I personally am proud of myself of the growth aspect of being mature, because as soon as you said amazing, you know how bad I hate that word.
You know what?
Because
I'm glad.
You're right. Because there's so many people out there like, oh my gosh, my soup is amazing. Like, no, Mount Rushmore is amazing. So I was going to say,
my day is amazing. My life is amazing because it really, truly is.
It is. Yes.
It really, truly is.
Let's get into this. What do you got for us?
So I love that you bring this up, right? And you brought up Proverbs 3:5, and I'm going to read a few passages here.
5 through 11, correct?
You know what? I might even read through 12, just because, right? So let's start with Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. It shall be health to thy navel, and marrow to thy bones. Honor the Lord with thy substance, and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall be burst out with new wine. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, even as father the son in whom he delighteth.
When you go into that talks about, lean into the Lord, not thine own understanding. That 100% was saying, okay, not Jay's way, God's way for me. And in everything, surrender to him and let him show me the way. One step further in that is, and when you get down into verse 11, when it says, don't hate the chastising of the Lord for the discipline.
Right.
And I may have said that out of order, but you get the general idea. Basically, he doesn't discipline us out of anger or disgust, but rather it's so that we are fit to be in his presence.
Right.
That's why it dawned on me, like, I became homeless. For the first time in my life, at 50 years old, I was homeless. I knew I had a little issue here in my head. I'm going to call it little, which was astronomical, right? So as time goes on, I got a little issue with drinking. I got a little issue with cocaine. Now I'm doing crack, right? That progression should have been a sign.
Right.
It should have been when I ran my business into the ground. It should have been when after my business, I couldn't keep a job. It should have been when I got divorced, not once, but twice. It should have been when my children stopped talking to me, but it wasn't until I became homeless that I was like, oh my gosh, I truly have nothing. And that's usually when we turn to God.
Right.
It's when there's nowhere else to turn. But at first I was like, what's happening to me? Right?
What did I do to deserve
What
this?
did I do to deserve this? And it wasn't, he didn't discipline me out of anger. He didn't discipline me out of disgust. He did it because I wasn't fit to be in his presence. And he knew he had something great for me to do. Still not exactly sure what all that is, but I'm just being obedient, right? But I wasn't mad anymore when I really read that. And I was like, you know what? It's not his fault. It's my fault. I wasn't fit to be in his presence.
Right.
I wasn't fit to even speak his name. And so here's my coach to people that are out there that feel guilty about your sin is so much. How could you ever be forgiven? Let's talk about David for a second, right? David, arguably the greatest warrior of the Bible, hands down,
by far,
has literally murdered tens of thousands of people, slain, murdered, war, whatever you want to call it, killed them, right? Ended their life, ceased to exist, no more breath, and literally sent a husband out to die so he could steal his wife. He's done some pretty horrible things, but it also says in the Bible that David had God's favor. Moses murdered. Moses had favor. I mean, Paul, the apostle, was killing Christians and God turned him, right?
Well, when he was Saul.
Right. It's true, but he still did it as a human.
Yes.
The point is all those sins were forgiven on the cross. And when you think your sin is too much, that belittles what he did on the cross.
Yes.
That takes it away. So there's nothing you can do that he didn't already know you were going to do before you were born that he hasn't already paid the price for. So that being said, that's pretty awesome, right? I love that.
It's more than awesome. I think it's amazing.
It is amazing. That is Mount Rushmore amazing. That's certainly.
Yes,
I want to talk about first fruits here later. Don't know if you tithe or if people have tithed or they have and they done it. There was a period when I was doing mortgages, I was tithing and I was still married to my first wife, and all of a sudden my business blew up.
Yeah.
Right. And then she's like, well, we've given enough to the church. Why are we still giving? I'm like, well, because that's what it says we're supposed to do.
There's something to that, right? I'm the same type of way. I believe that there's something to that, right? It's about a genuinity, though, too, right? Like you have to find what you believe in giving to. If you feel like you're forced to give to the church just because it says to give to the church, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. But let's say, for example, we talk about tithing and we talk about giving back. One of the things that I love to do is walk around with a bunch of $100 in my pocket, $100 bills, and I give them periodically to people for doing things that I see as commendable for living a life of Christ. No rhyme or reason. I don't need any accolades back. In fact, I like to kind of sneak it to them and be like, hey, I left something over there, and like walk out and not say anything, because I feel like it's just a small way to say, hey, look, this is my way of giving back all of the blessings and all of the fruits that I've received to somebody who really, truly deserves it, right? You have to find those opportunities in order to do that. Tithing doesn't necessarily have to be just the church, right? Because sometimes the church, let's face it, we can see the church as corrupt sometimes, right?
It depends on the
It's
church.
led by men. It's led by men. So there is an ability for that to come in there, but if it's of God.
Right. Church is the people.
Yes.
Okay. So that's when he's talking about giving your first of your fruits to that. It's to the people. Now, like Taya says, you guys will hear me talk more and more about my recovery support team that I've built. And we're going to have a whole episode on that one day.
Yeah.
How to build a recovery support team. Because just because you're clean doesn't mean you're in recovery, right? You need a support system after that. And to me, I took that like a military team and made like little fire team leaders over each category of whole health, emotional to mental to physical to social graces. So I don't act like a jackass in public or on social media, right? To financial. And with Taya, who is my spiritual team leader.
Can we talk about who Taya is?
Taya Kyle is Chris Kyle from American Sniper. That's his wife. She's a very good friend of mine. I've never met Chris Kyle. Did not know him. I know Taya completely post Chris and just met her through the mortgage thing that I was doing at Benchmark Mortgage in Texas. Yeah. And she is an incredible human being. And when I was creating my recovery support team for each team leader in each category, I thought like, okay, like Taya, for example, who's the most spiritual person I know? And it was her. She's the most godly woman I've ever met.
I mean, if you think about what she went through, how could she not be? Right. To be able to support.
Think about it. She could have been bitter. She could have hated them.
But what I mean is like when you see her personality and how much she gives back to the community and how of love she is, how could you not think that she would be the one?
Right. She told me she's very, very cautious where she tithes. She travels a lot, so she doesn't always get a chance to go to the same church all the time. I think you should have a home church, but I don't think there's anything wrong with going and checking out other churches, right? Your tithe, however, and this is my opinion, Jay McMakin's opinion, should be to the church where you feel those funds are going to be used to grow the kingdom the best, right? And that church might be not a church. It could be a ministry, like an evangelist. You know, it could be a prison ministry. So tithing, though, I would encourage anyone for 30 days to try it.
Yeah.
And just see what happens in 30 days, how it comes back to you. The Bible promises that it'll come back to you, you know.
Well, today is September 14th.
Yeah.
Right. So when we come back and we record in October, I'm going to take you up on that. I'm going to do this for the next 30 days. Okay. I'm going to do 10%. I'm going to find the right. And then I'll probably go above and beyond that just because I feel like I'm.
And that's really what I think. That's the difference between tithe and offering.
Right.
Above and beyond that is the $100 bill slipping at people offering and stuff like that.
That's not going to stop.
No, I don't think it should. No. I think that's an awesome thing too. But I think when you really, and I would encourage you to even research tithing a little bit better and understand it a little bit more. First of all, it's all God's anyway.
Right. It is. Yeah. It's
And all
not.
he's asking is for 10 of it back, just like we learned when we worked for Chase or Wells Fargo. For every $1 that the bank has, it can circulate 9 of it, turn it into 9.
Right.
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 And that's basically
But over and over again too.
Right,
So
over
like,
and over
so
again,
like, it's
you
like
know?
really when it's leverage, it's like a 99. Right.
So you see what I'm saying? And so with that back, he can put it back 100-fold.
Right.
And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how that works and how it just feels, man. It just feels awesome to do that. For those of you that have VA disability and you file the claim and sometimes you get back pay, I took 10% right off the top of my back pay and turned around and gave it to that chaplain right over there in VA Battle Creek.
Well,
And they were stunned. They were like, what? I was like, isn't that what it said to do? That's what it says to do. Like, yeah, but they were so excited because they could buy all these Bibles for all the veterans, the homeless veterans that come in, people that don't have, but you'd be amazed how many people don't have Bibles.
Right.
And I actually had not a say, but they asked, what would you use it for? Buy Bibles. I love my military Bible.
That was really cool. I really enjoyed reading that and the excerpts from it and being able to go back and read some of those things that explained it more.
And it's called the Warrior's Bible, just so you guys know.
Yes.
Narrated by military veterans, written by God, narrated by veterans.
Yes.
Let's be honest. And unless you are a theologian and you are a Bible scholar, there's going to be a moment when you're reading scripture like, what is that?
Every time I read the Bible, I have to really take a step back and ask for God to step in and intervene and explain it to me. And he might show up with Jay McMakin with the Bible that explained it to me.
On you right now. So what kind of answer did you get?
Well, today was really easy. The answer that I got, you showed up with your Warrior Bible. So I called Jay a couple weeks ago and I was struggling with some things at home. You can go back and you can read it, but we read Proverbs 14 today based on the day, right? Today's the 14th, so we read Proverbs 14.
Simple. And day of the calendar.
Day of the
There's 32 Proverbs and there's 31 days mostly.
Correct. And it just, the alignment that it had with some of the things that were going on in my life was the last conversation that I had with Jay. It was really the last true conversation I had with him. And for him to come and then be able to read through it and then to have some of the excerpts that are narrated by the veteran in order to understand what it means. I had to stop halfway through 3 times because I had tears in my eyes because it was the perfect chapter to read at that moment based on the last conversation that you and I had. But also seeing some of the progression because I've been praying on these things since I've talked to Jay that has come, but it's even more guidance and direction to let me know that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
I think we're rocking out on the faith word.
Yeah.
Here pretty good. Let's talk about some growth. You know, I'm not to skip over Valor, right? But we can kind of come back to
I think Valor is like a constant thing though, right? Like
I think that Valor
constantly.
is there and having the courage to discuss those things in the face of adversity. You know? So but growth, let's get into some financial things. And I'm going to just kind of dip into VA mortgage.
Right.
Just a little bit here. So I want everyone who's out there who is a veteran to understand that that is a benefit, no different than your medical or your mental. And it is a benefit that is afforded to you based on your time in service. If you did 2 years consecutive in active duty, so let me back this up. Let me just do this the right way.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Well, you know this game. I will say this right before we get into this, but I went through TAPS, right? When I got out in 2000, I went through TAPS. And I know it's TAMPS, and I know that they've changed some of the different
So
programs.
that stands for Transition Assistance Military Personnel or Transition Assistance Personnel.
Correct. So when I went through, we spent a day on filling out an application, a day on putting together a resume, a day on actual benefits for VA health benefits.
Right.
And I think there was this throw in, oh yeah, you can get a VA home loan too. And I didn't know what that meant. I had no clue what that meant at that point.
2 things you hear in that class that stick in your brain. Because let me paint this picture for everyone. You got a couple hundred active duty personnel sitting in an auditorium. It's probably hot.
Very hot.
Right? And you're bored out of your skull and you have less than 90 days to become a civilian. You're out of there. Right. Like you're gone. You're like, your brain's already.
I was at 34 days.
Yeah.
If I remember.
You know, the requirement is less than 90 days. You have to have this class. Mm-hmm. Right. So you could be out in 2 days or 90 days from now, but you get the idea. You're pretty much short time. It's over with. Right. You're ready. Bye-bye. Right. And so all you want to do is just get out of this auditorium. So when the mortgage piece comes up, which is only 1 hour at best, maybe 45 minutes.
I don't think we got that. I literally think somebody, maybe it was 45 minutes.
I've taught when Mark and I did it, Mark Jamison and ran Cleveland Loan Center. We did it. We made sure it was an hour. And when you teach this class, you think everyone's like, yeah, dude, like they're just this guy's up. Really, in reality, I had to put myself like, what was it like when I was sitting in there? Exactly. Like, dude, you're killing me, Smalls. Get off the stage so I can please go back to my room.
Right.
And
get some rack time.
Yeah, get some rack time.
Rack time.
Or jack time. One of the two. Right. Back then it was, sleep or drink, and that was it, Rap time or jack time.
Whatever.
Or snack time. That was it. I remember asking several veterans, what are the two things you remember that I said before I walk out of here? And without a doubt, it was always 0 down and it's a guaranteed loan. What does that insinuate?
I don't know.
We're going to bring $1 to closing, and no matter what, I can't be denied this loan because it's guaranteed.
Right.
So here's the reality, folks. It is a benefit where the veteran is allowed to use 0 funds down to close in most scenarios.
Most.
Not always.
Not always.
Right. And it is a guaranteed loan to the lender.
To be insured.
To be insured. So the VA is not a lender. They are an insurance agency, no different than State Farm or Allstate. So if your house burns down, State Farm is going to replace it. For that, you have to pay a premium. If a lender gives you a VA home loan, the VA insures Wells Fargo.
25%.
Right? Up to 25% or $36,000, whichever is greater.
Correct.
Right? That if you foreclose, 2 things are going to happen. They're going to cut 2 checks. Check number 1, they're going to buy the loan back. It becomes a VA-owned home, just like a HUD home for FHA.
Right.
The second one is they're going to cut that check like an insurance check for State Farm to replace the flooding in your house. They're going to replace the flooding that hit the P&L, profit and loss, for Wells Fargo in their REO section, which is real estate.
That red section, with that red number that's at the bottom.
Right. Nobody who's sitting in this auditorium has any clue about that. Right. And they're just like, okay, yeah, it's cool. So then you go and you apply for your VA home loan and you get declined because you have a 505 credit score. And you're like, dude, you can't do that, bro. I'll rip your head off. I'll charge 16 people out here, and I know how to run a fire team. And it's like, whoa, bro. Okay, I get it. So that's where Military Mortgage Boot Camp came in, where we decided that we were going to go out and educate what we first thought the problem was real estate agents.
Right. Getting an offer accepted, the stigma behind being a veteran, what it meant about being the borrower.
And to this day, you'll see on real estate listings, no VA allowed.
I'm not sure why. But
right. How dare they?
Right.
Because the seller who's selling the home, I promise you, has no clue or no feeling one way or another about a VA home loan. It's that listing agent who planted that seed that there's what type of problem?
Appraisal problem.
Always. They're going to look.
That's the first and foremost. That's always number one.
And that's the only issue.
Right.
And they're going to back it up with 3 other things. Well, there's no money. It doesn't matter if there's no money.
Client's not strong enough. They're not putting any money into the transaction. Right. I heard that one all the time too.
So the reality is that almost less than 2% of veterans ever foreclose, which is way lower than Fannie and Freddie Mac.
Even at Fannie Mae's low spot, they're 1.9, 1.9. I think at VA's high spot, they're 1.6, 1.7 on a default rate.
Right. So the average FICO score for a veteran was 739 or 749 last year.
Right.
I'd have to go back and double check that.
I think it was like 720 for Fannie Freddie. It was like 724, 720. Yeah, right around there.
So you're talking about a borrower that can go Fannie Freddie any day of the week that they wanted to.
Correct.
But why would I put 20% down to have a higher interest rate?
And monthly mortgage insurance if I didn't.
Right. So I got to put more money down and my rate is higher, period. And sorry, that makes no financial sense. Plus, it's a benefit that I earned by serving this country. Now, here's why real estate agents, and this is why we thought we had to educate them in the beginning first. And since then, we've kind of changed our mind on that and realized it's the mortgage loan officer that needs, not the real estate agent. But the theory is, the appraisals are terrible. There are only 2 things that have to happen on a VA appraisal that doesn't have to happen on a conventional appraisal. Number 1 is they have to stick their head in the attic. That's it. And number 2, there has to be railings. And I think on a conventional, you now have to do this if there's 3 steps or more and the platform counts as 1 step. Right. So if there's more than 2 steps, got to have a railing. Other than that,
And even then, I think sometimes I've seen those slide through without the railings, but on any VA loan, more than 2 steps always requires a railing.
So it boils down to this when it comes to appraisal and value on a VA home loan where real estate agents kind of get weird. There's only 3 reasons an appraisal doesn't come in, right? Number 1, the listing agent overlisted the property.
Correct.
I know that's never happened, right? Number 2, there are some issues with the property that aren't disclosed.
Right.
And then the appraiser finds them out. That's never happened either. Right. And then number 3, well, the appraiser just sucks. And every real estate agent's going to go with that.
But it's always number 3.
Right. Now, my wife, my second wife, whom I love, right? she was a real estate agent. Okay. And she used to say this, well, an appraisal is just an opinion. And I was like, unlike your listing, which, by the way, is emotionally driven by your seller because they think their house is awesome, and commission-based driven by you. Last I checked, the appraiser got paid the same thing for every single one, doesn't know the sellers, and he's just completely neutral.
Right. He's the only one making money in this transaction, for sure.
That's probably why I'm not married anymore. But there's those type of things. And so when you get into it and it's about value, and when you really realize if you're just not overlisting the property, there really is no difference. And there's been leaps and bounds, and we've kind of helped close that gap on the education of that. Builders felt the same way, and we've helped builders in Texas do that. Just had that stigmatism in their brain until we actually had them pull the logistics and see the number of how many VA appraisals came in short.
Right.
They just pulled 1 month, and out of 1,300 homes, guess how many came in short?
You'd have to tell me. I was saying I would be shocked if it was
4
more
came in short, and these are homes that are $400,000, and the typical gap was 8 to 12 grand.
I would have said 13 because that would have been 1%, right? Like I would have been shocked at that.
So small and minute.
Yeah.
There are certain things, and this could be a whole other episode we did. How do we get the appraisers to work with the builders, and how did they get to? Because builders they're worse than real estate agents because it's emotional for them,
correct,
and it's profit for them.
It's everything. It's their heart they put in.
They have zero idea that hey, if I build this home and I sell my first home in this community at $220,000, next week I should sell it for $280. The next one that's identical, that's right next door, because that's just what happens. Like no, you have no comps but your other house.
It's for $220.
For $220 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So you have to understand, and I get the materials and profit margins, but that's why you have to understand how to work with the appraisers. And it's a whole different episode we can get in.
No, and just like, and then some of the things that, from an episode standpoint, when we talk about the things that we're going to cover, right? So we covered that stigma, and I think that's a big piece of it. And how do we make sure that you're using your VA home loan because it is an entitlement?
It absolutely is. So I was teaching at NOC North Oakland County Board of Realtors here in Michigan, and I asked the question: how many real estate agents here? There's about 50 agents in the class, right? Have ever put on their listing no VA offers accepted? And about half the class raised their hand.
Ow.
And I said, how dare you, right? You get to be a real estate agent in this country and make 6 figures or more and live in a beautiful house with a white picket fence and drive your real estate agent car around because it's a free country. This doesn't work in Iraq and Afghanistan. You see the pictures every single day for the past 50 years. It all looks like a pile of rubble, right?
And even more so into today.
Right. So my point is, how dare you say I won't accept your VA offer? But we had to change the narrative. So I asked, why is it that you don't want VA home loans? Is it because you don't like our veterans? And one of our favorite real estate agents from Remax Encore in Clarkston, one Miss Madeline Deshawn, she retired from real estate so that she could chase her dream of having a restaurant. But when she was a real estate broker, she was the one that stood up in class and said, you know what? My brother's a veteran. I love veterans. We all love our veterans. And she straight up, like one pitch, fastball. If you could find an effing loan officer that knew what they were doing, we'd be happy to use them. Because every time we try, they screw it up and screw up everything. And that's when it dawned on me. The problem wasn't with the real estate agents. It was with the mortgage community.
They wanted
it was the lender.
Yeah.
Because mortgage loan officers are expected to know conventional, FHA, rural development, a 3-1, 5-1, 7-1 live, a 6-month LIBOR.
I always ask this: So when we took the NMLS test, there was what 110 questions on it,
Right.
right?
And
How many of them were dedicated towards VA?
12.
12.
If
Out of the
that.
right.
If
I think
that,
there were
maybe
12
10.
questions available,
Right.
and you got like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Which there's so many different nuances and different things that you should know about the VA home loan that it almost required its own certification.
It does. That's one of the things that we were going to work on in the future.
Yeah.
Is to approach NMLS with that, but that's still in the making yet to come. But I do believe that will come to fruition one day. So that clarity right then and there was like, wow, she's right. It's my industry. It's our industry. The lending industry is the problem. And you look at what's expected of loan officers, and it makes sense now. Like companies like Rocket Mortgage, where why do I need them when the computer can do? If it's all these different products,
Yeah.
and I have someone who's got, a 750 FICO score and they've never made a late payment. Why not let them pull their own credit, upload their own thing, pick their own rate? You don't need a loan officer for refinance, period.
Right.
For a conventional refinance,
Correct.
I should say. When it comes to a purchase, so I asked this question to the real estate agents. Okay, how many of you know a loan officer that can do a loan that they have an 800 FICO score, they can put 20% down, and how many of you know a loan officer that get that deal done? Everyone. Okay. Flip the script. How many of you know a loan officer that can handle this scenario? I have a Marine Corps, active duty Marine Corps sergeant who's deployed in Afghanistan. His wife is pregnant with 2 little kids, and she's getting PCS order, permanent change of station orders, going from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, over to Camp Pendleton. And that has to happen now.
Right. He's on his way back. with this.
PCS orders. No, he's not on his way back. She's handling it all.
I got you.
Which means we need a power of attorney.
Right. And not a general power of attorney.
Right. Transaction specific power of
Transaction
attorney. because
specific.
He's deployed.
Correct.
And this is a real estate transaction. How many of you have a loan officer can handle that? One person. Of course, it was Maddie. Raised her hand. But dude, that's the whole point,
I
right?
get it.
And maybe in Michigan, we don't see that as much because we don't have as many active duty bases, but there's plenty of National Guard bases that are around here.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
And guess what? They're getting more and more activated on Title 10 orders and becoming active duty. So, especially if things kick off here with Israel and Gaza and everything's going, so.
With our communities, we could be a hot spot very quickly.
Absolutely. Either way, it's there. We know it exists, and the lack of education exists as well. So that's where we kind of come in with that.
Right. My biggest thing is having met Jay. One of my favorite stories, Jay, is I forget who, maybe it was Denise's father who was like, I'm going to use my VA home loan. I'm entitled to this. Who was it? There was a gentleman that was before you and I really got heavy into the VA game. Right. You're like, you kept trying to take him conventional. And he's like, devil dog.
No, that was a guy. I was working at Fifth. I know exactly who you're talking about. I was working at Fifth Third Bank.
Yes.
And this guy was a wealth management advisor for Merrill Lynch.
Okay.
And he was Third Force Recon in Vietnam. And he had umpteen tours, whatever. He just got rack medals and everything.
Right.
This dude had liquid assets of almost 9 figures and made 7.
Right.
And didn't even work. And he was buying a house in Grosse Seal in Michigan, which is an affluent little island right under the Detroit River. I know Detroit River sounds so affluent, doesn't it? But it really is. When you get over there, Grosse Seal really is, guys, I promise. There is some nice properties on the Detroit River. So at the time, the conforming loan limit was 417. This is way back when. And so his purchase price was 617. So he was going to put, I said, sweet.
50 grand.
Yeah. He was going to put 200 down. And I was like, sweet, we'll just take, he had an 807 FICO score. It was the first 800 score I'd ever seen. I'm like, dude, this is so easy, so money. Conventional. He goes, whoa, stop, devil dog. If you want my business, you're going to put me in a VA home loan. I've had 3 VA home loans, and trust me, I know numbers. I'm good at them. You mathematically can't beat this loan. And if you want my business, you're going to put me in this loan. And let me just tell you one more thing. Every time you put a veteran in a conventional FHA loan over a VA loan, you're screwing them.
Yeah.
And I just sat there like, wow, I just got schooled.
Yeah.
So 2 things happened. I said, all right, I'm going to learn how to do this. That's the first VA loan I ever did. Mind you guys, I've been in the business 10 years at this point. And all I ever heard was it was a pain in the butt. It takes 6 months for the appraisal. It's just much easier to take them conventional or subprime.
Right.
At that time, because if the credit score was lower. And so I said, all right, I'm going to roll my sleeves up, preparing for this. Is going to be, it's going to be horrific.
Dive in.
Closed in 26 or 27 days, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It was a 0.5 point lower than the conventional rate.
Right.
His truth in lending, he saved over 6 figures in interest because of the half a point reduction at the time. And I was just blown away by it. And so I thought 2 things to myself. Number one, my client's never going to know any more about my job than me ever again, unless it's like my first day on it. Years into it, there's no excuse for that. Okay. Number 2, my OCD got the best of me. I was like, okay, all that kept ringing in my head was you mathematically can't beat this loan.
Right.
I sat down. You know me. You see how I've done this, dude. I've just sat down for like
Excel spreadsheets trying to break numbers.
Days. I mean, it looked like an FBI profiler crap all over the wall. You know,
remember the beautiful
every
mind
scenario.
Beautiful
6
mind.
6-month LIBOR, 12-month LIBOR, 3-1, 5-1, 7-1, 228, 327, all across the way. There was only 2 scenarios at that time where the VA loan mathematically did not benefit the veteran. Number 1 was when they had another VA loan. So they had an existing VA home loan out and they were going to purchase their second one as their primary residence because they left that one behind. Whether they were renting it or kept it in their portfolio didn't matter. Then the entitlement calculation kicked in and they would have had to bring so much money to close that eventually it might have been better to do a different product if the difference was so big.
Right.
The second one was at some point jumbo just kicked in because it was only good up to like $1 million.
Yeah, there was some differences going on before Blue Water.
Then the Blue Water, Vietnam Navy Blue Water bill kicks in, and President Trump, bless him for that, kicking that into veterans.
Correct.
Because his theory was, look, I know plenty of wealthy veterans. They can afford $8 million homes. Why can't they use this benefit that they earn and go zero down $8 million if they could qualify it with their credit, income, and assets? Great question, right?
Right.
And so that was implemented. So the new rule is if you don't have an existing VA home loan, so this is going to be your one and only loan, there is no loan limit. So if you can qualify for an $8 million loan with your credit, your income, and your assets, absolutely, you can go zero down. So that took away one of the 2. So now we're back to just there's only one.
If you have an
mathematically doesn't
existing
work.
home loan, depending on how much that home loan is in and how much you're looking to purchase, it could eliminate that option for you. Financially, it may make more sense at that point in time to lean on a conventional loan depending on where the market conditions are at. I know from my personal experience, my first VA home loan was after I met you when I bought my house with my first wife, Julie, up in Fenton. And there's some things that looking back on it today, I would have done a little bit differently. Knowing the things that I know, being able to not have to pay the funding fee that I was entitled to not have to pay, right? By filing for my disability at the right place.
Just talk about the funding fee for a quick second. The funding fee, remember I said that VA is not a lender. They are an agency like State Farm or Allstate. That funding fee is your insurance premium. That's what a veteran has to pay unless they have at least 10% disability rating, then it's waived. And that funding fee can be pretty expensive for the first time when you go zero down. There's only one first time use. And is a cheaper interest rate than when you go subsequent use. So once it's subsequent, it can get pretty substantial. If your loan amount is up there, it would be 3.6%. And that's if you go zero down, the more money down, it cheapens down. So anything from 10 to 5, it'll reduce it down.
Right.
My point, I didn't want to get in the weeds on
I know
necessarily.
But at least explain what it is and what it covers.
Right. And the funding fee is basically that fund that if you do default into foreclosure, that's the money that the U.S. government uses. The Department of Veteran Affairs goes in and pays the lender. And let's just say it's Wells Fargo. Hey, Dominic had a foreclosure. He defaulted on his loan. We're going to cut you 2 checks. We're going to buy the loan back. And we're going to give you this insurance premium, which was in the form of the funding fee.
Right.
Okay. And again, that only has to be paid out less than 2% of the time.
Right.
Because 98.2% of veterans make their mortgage payment. So if I'm a lender, I got a 98% chance that Dominic's going to make his payment.
98.2. I mean, it really is. I mean, it is greater than 98%.
Yeah, it is.
I think that.
And I agree with you because you're kind of being silly when you say 0.2. But when you talk about like portfolio volumes and the amount of that 0.2
is
can
a
get
make or break.
expensive.
We talk about people buying tapes and mortgages on the back end, these smaller companies, and they want to invest into like some of the larger loans, the $2 and $3 million deals, and they're buying 10 of them. If one of them defaults, they're upside down. They're out of business. They're gone. And right. And if they're looking at a 2%, so if they buy 10 of these mortgages and 2 of them, 2% go into default, you know, that can be a big deal. The thing that the biggest piece that I wanted to bring to the table and, changing some of the things that I had learned is first and foremost, knowing that you can purchase a 4-unit with no money out of pocket. So like if you have this vision that you want to be this real estate mogul, Before you jump into anything, the first thing you should do is, hey, I have the opportunity to go out and buy a 4-unit property, live in one, manage the property, do the repairs on the property to really find what I want to do in this space, right? Do I enjoy doing the repairs on the house, or do I enjoy finding tenants and then providing them with housing? We can then provide you with other ideas, concepts, options in order to create that wealth for yourself in the real estate space, in that market. There's some things, like I said, I wish I would have done a little different, but I was able to create some great wealth because I was able to buy in a timely spot. The one thing I always tell everybody, everyone always asks me, is right now a good time to buy? And I always tell everybody the same thing. If you can acquire property at any given time, you should always try to acquire that property, because sometimes those stars don't align even when prices are down or rates are down, where you can actually still acquire that property. So get your hands on it when you can. They're not creating any more land out there. They might build some more houses, but they're not creating any more land out there. So if you can get your hands on some property, it's always a good time to buy.
Yep. If you are a veteran, yes, you can purchase up to a 4-unit. Actually, technically, you can purchase up to 10 units.
Technically.
And that is unheard of. And I'm not going to get in the weeds on this, but I'm going to explain what I just said. So in the world of mortgage, when you go beyond 4 units, it becomes a commercial loan. It is no longer a residential loan. That is not true in VA. VA will allow a veteran to finance up to 10 units. Now, here's how that works. From units 1 to 4, one veteran has to occupy it as a primary residence.
Correct.
From units 5 to 8, 2 veterans have to occupy that amount of units as their primary residence. And from 8 to 10, 3 veterans have to occupy it. And keep in mind, when they go in, whatever that dollar amount is, if there's 2 veterans, let's say it's $100,000. I have to qualify for $50,000 with my income, and Dominic has to qualify for $50,000 if we're the 2 borrowers.
Yes.
Just split it right on
Down the middle.
We got to pull each other's. Here's what it is. So if you have $300,000, 10-unit property, and 3 of us are going to qualify, each one of us would have to qualify for a third of that. And then there's the reserve caveat with that. So you don't need reserves when you're purchasing a primary residence unless it is a multi-unit property. Right. Then there is a 6 months PITI reserve.
PITI,
use it for reserves.
Can I use it for reserves?
Residual.
Or residual income or effective, qualifying income.
You can use it for effective income. They'll let you take the median rent for the area and give you 75% of that to wash it. Now, you can actually, and this is where people get confused, you can only use it for income if you've had a 2-year landlord history.
Right.
Using it for income and washing it are 2 different things.
Correct.
Let me explain myself right here. So if the median rent for the area is $1,000 and the payment is only $800, there would be a $200 surplus I could normally use for income.
Right.
That can't happen if I'm not a 2-year landlord.
Correct.
Now, here's a loophole and why you're going to love the show. What makes you a 2-year landlord? Hire a management company.
That's it.
They've been landlords for 2 years.
Correct.
Boom, problem solved.
We got and as we build out and as we build this network in different states and different areas, we are going to identify. We got people that can fill in those gaps for you so that you can create these opportunities for yourself. But these were the basics, right? These are the first couple things that Jay and I really wanted to focus on, and I feel like we're touching all of the right things. And let's lead this back, let's tie this up, and let's roll on.
I think we'll tie it up with Valor. Right? Let's tie it up with Valor in that we actually had the courage and bravery to do this show in the face of adversity when, let's look at the country right now with the presidential race.
I know.
They're eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. Right? Like, okay, come on, man. And where did you hear that, Mr. Trump? On TV.
From The Simpsons.
On TV. That's the man, literally the guy who coined fake news.
Right.
Just said fake news.
I know.
So look, I'm not picking on anybody. And one way or another, I know whoever is going to be put in the office is God's will.
That's correct.
Right? Because God's will ultimately is going to be done. The courage to do this show, I mean, we've always would have loved to have done this, to actually step up and do it and just bring it. And we may fail miserably and flop, and you guys might just hate us for all I know. So to me, that's Valor in the face of adversity in a tough economy. Yeah. Inflation is high, gas is high, Food
Life is hard.
prices are
Life is
high,
hard for most
but
people right now.
we're taking the time to invest in studio time, to come in here and invest in our futures and hopefully your futures as well, to help build this kingdom with faith, valor, and growth.
Amen.